The handcuffs clicked shut around Maria's wrists as she stood in the marble hallway she had cleaned 1,000 times before. "You're under arrest for theft," the police officer said, his voice echoing through the huge house. Maria's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Behind the staircase, 8-year-old Jason Frank watched with wide eyes, his small hands pressed against the cold marble wall. But here's what nobody knew yet. The truth about why Maria got arrested would shock everyone in this house. And the person who would save her? The quiet little boy who barely spoke to anyone. A boy most people thought was just different. A boy whose special mind would crack this case wide open in ways that would leave everyone speechless. Let me tell you how this all started, because this story will change how you see justice, friendship, and what it really means to be a hero. Hey friends, thank you so much for coming around. Watch until the end. If you leave now, you'll miss the best part. I promise the final twist will be worth your time. So let's continue. 3 months earlier, Maria Santos had walked through the front door of the Frank mansion for the first time. Her old sneakers squeaked on the shiny floor. She carried a worn backpack with all her cleaning supplies and a prayer in her heart. The house stretched out before her like a palace from a fairy tale, but Maria wasn't here to live a dream. She was here to save a life. "You must be the new maid," said Mrs. Frank, looking down at Maria like she was something stuck to her expensive shoe. "I hope you're better than the last 3 we fired. The first one broke my favorite vase. The second one couldn't follow simple instructions. The third one, well, let's just say we had trust issues." Maria nodded, trying to smile. She needed this job more than air, more than sleep, more than anything else in the world. Back home in the Philippines, her daughter Sophia lay in a hospital bed, her small body fighting a disease that was winning. The medicine that could save her cost more money than Maria had ever seen in her entire life. This job wasn't just work. It was Sophia's only chance at seeing her 9th birthday. The Frank house was like a museum where real people happened to live. Everything was white, gold, or made of glass that cost more than most cars. Fresh flowers arrived every Tuesday. The floors were so shiny you could see your reflection. Even the air seemed expensive, perfumed with some fancy scent that probably had a French name. Mr. Frank owned big companies that built things all over the world. Skyscrapers, bridges, shopping centers. His name was on buildings in 12 different countries. Mrs. Frank spent her days shopping at stores where a single purse cost more than most people made in a month. She went to fancy parties where everyone pretended to care about charity while showing off their jewelry. And then there was Jason. Jason was different from other kids, but not in the way cruel people whispered about. He was 8 years old with dark hair that stuck up in the back, no matter how much his mother tried to smooth it down. His eyes were the color of chocolate, deep and serious, always watching, always thinking. Jason didn't like loud sounds. They hurt his ears like someone was shooting fireworks inside his head. He didn't look people in the eyes because it felt like staring into the sun. He spoke in whispers when he spoke at all, and sometimes he would rock back and forth when the world got too big and too bright. But Jason's mind worked in beautiful, mysterious ways. He could remember every single thing that happened to him since he was 3 years old. He noticed patterns that adults missed. He could tell you exactly how many steps it took to get from his bedroom to the kitchen, 47, how many books were on each shelf in the library, he counted them every week, and what the weather had been like on any given day for the past 2 years. "Don't bother with the boy," Mrs. Frank told Maria on her first day, waving her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "He doesn't like strangers. He gets upset when people try to interact with him. Just clean around him and pretend he's not there. It's easier for everyone." But Maria couldn't pretend Jason wasn't there. How could anyone ignore a child? When she saw him sitting alone in the big living room, surrounded by toy cars arranged in perfect lines, looking so small in such a huge space, her heart broke a little. She had been a mother since she was 19 years old. She knew what lonely looked like, and it looked exactly like Jason Frank. The first time Maria tried to talk to Jason, he ran away so fast he left his favorite red car behind. The second time, he hid under the dining room table and stayed there until she finished cleaning the room. The third time, he pressed his hands over his ears and started humming a tune she didn't recognize. But Maria didn't give up. She had learned something important from raising Sophia during the hardest times. Love doesn't need words. Love doesn't need eye contact. Love doesn't need anything except patience and the willingness to show up day after day, even when it seems hopeless. So every morning, Maria would clean the room where Jason played. She would hum soft songs from her home country, lullabies her own mother had sung to her when she was small. She would carefully arrange Jason's toys in neat rows when they got mixed up, making sure the red cars were separated from the blue ones, just the way he liked them. She never tried to touch him or force him to talk. She just existed near him, like warm sunlight that never asked for anything back. And slowly, like a flower opening its petals to the morning sun, something beautiful started to happen. One morning, in her third week, Maria found a piece of paper on the kitchen counter. It was a drawing made with red crayon, a stick figure with long black hair holding a broom. The figure had a big smile and wore what looked like Maria's favorite yellow cleaning gloves. At the bottom, in shaky letters that must have taken forever to write, Jason had spelled out Maria. Maria's eyes filled with tears that blurred her vision. She had to sit down on the kitchen stool and press the drawing to her chest. This little boy, who barely spoke to his own parents, who hid from visitors, who seemed to live in a world all his own, had drawn her a picture. He had noticed her. He had remembered her name. He had wanted to make her smile. From that day on, Jason would leave small gifts for Maria. A dandelion from the garden, still wet with morning dew. A smooth pebble he found near the fountain. A drawing of her favorite cleaning spray bottle, complete with tiny bubbles floating around it. Once, he left her half of his breakfast cookie, wrapped carefully in a napkin with "For Maria" written on the outside. Maria kept every single gift in her apron pocket like they were precious jewels, and to her, they were more valuable than any diamond. The real breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday in October. The sky was dark grey, and the rain drummed against the windows like tiny fists. Maria was dusting the living room when she heard a crash from Jason's playroom, followed by a sound that made her heart skip, a child crying. She rushed into the playroom to find Jason on the floor, surrounded by the broken pieces of his favorite toy car set. The cars he had spent hours arranging were scattered everywhere. Some were broken, their tiny wheels rolling in different directions. Jason sat in the middle of the chaos, rocking back and forth, tears streaming down his face as he made soft humming sounds. "Oh, sweet boy," Maria whispered, her voice gentle as a prayer. She sat down on the floor next to him, not too close, not too far. Close enough to help, far enough to let him breathe. She started humming the lullaby she used to sing to Sophia when monsters seemed to hide in every shadow. Jason's humming stopped. His rocking slowed. And then, for the first time since Maria had known him, he looked directly at her, really looked at her, his chocolate eyes meeting hers. "Cars. Broken," he whispered, his voice so quiet Maria almost missed it. "Yes, baby. Cars are broken. But you know what?" Jason shook his head, still looking at her. "Broken things can still be beautiful. Broken things can still work. Sometimes broken things work even better because they're unique." Together, they picked up every piece. Maria showed Jason how the cars could still roll even with scratches, how a car missing a door could still carry pretend passengers, how the broken parts didn't make them worthless. They made them special, one of a kind, irreplaceable. "Like me?" Jason asked, his voice so quiet it was barely a breath. Maria's heart squeezed tight. She wanted to hug this precious boy, but she knew he didn't like to be touched. Instead, she smiled the biggest, warmest smile she had. "Jason, honey, you're not broken. You're perfect exactly as you are. Your mind works in amazing ways that other people don't understand yet. You see things we miss. You remember things we forget. You're not broken. You're special." That was the moment everything changed. From then on, Jason and Maria were a team. Jason would help Maria clean by carrying her supplies in his small hands, his face serious with concentration. He would sort the cleaning cloths by color, all the blue ones together, all the yellow ones together. He would count the windows as Maria cleaned them, making sure she didn't miss a single one. Maria learned Jason's language, the language of routine and gentle consistency. She discovered he needed his juice in the blue cup, never the red one, because red made him think of fire trucks, and fire trucks were too loud in his mind. She learned that sudden movements scared him, so she always moved slowly and told him what she was going to do before she did it. She found out he counted everything: stairs, windows, the flowers in each vase, so she never moved anything without warning him first. "Jason," she would say, "I'm going to move your cars so I can dust the table. I'll put them back in the exact same order, okay?" And Jason would nod, watching carefully to make sure she kept her promise. Which she always did. In return, Jason started smiling more, real smiles that lit up his whole face. He began to laugh, a sound like silver bells, when Maria did funny voices while dusting the furniture. He would wait by the front window every morning, watching for her to walk up the long driveway. And for the first time in his 8 years of life, Jason had a friend who truly saw him, understood him, and loved him exactly as he was. But Mr. and Mrs. Frank were too busy with their important lives to notice the miracle happening in their own home. They saw Jason as a problem to be managed, not a child to be celebrated. They hired tutors and therapists, but they never just sat on the floor and listened to him the way Maria did. "The boy seems calmer lately," Mr. Frank mentioned one evening over dinner, not really looking up from his phone. Mrs. Frank replied, focused on planning the menu for her next charity luncheon. "Maybe that new medication is working." They had no idea that the medication their son needed wasn't in any bottle. It was understanding. It was patience. It was love that didn't try to change him into someone else. Then came the day that shattered their perfect world. Mrs. Frank had bought a new necklace at an exclusive jewelry store downtown. Not just any necklace, a diamond one with stones so clear and bright they looked like captured starlight. The price tag had enough zeros to make normal people dizzy. She wore it to the annual charity gala, where everyone complimented her taste and asked where she'd found such a beautiful piece. The next day, she tossed it carelessly on her dresser like it was a toy from a cereal box. In Mrs. Frank's world, expensive things were just things. 3 days later, the necklace was gone. "Maria!" Mrs. Frank's voice cut through the house like a knife blade. "Get in here right now!" Maria ran to the master bedroom, her heart already sinking to her shoes. She could tell by the tone of Mrs. Frank's voice, by the way her face was twisted with anger, that something terrible was about to happen. The air in the room felt electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Where is my diamond necklace?" Mrs. Frank's eyes were cold as winter ice. I don't know, Ma'am. I cleaned in here yesterday morning, but I didn't see any necklace." Maria's voice shook despite her efforts to stay calm. "It was right here on my dresser. You're the only one who comes in this room besides me." Mrs. Frank's voice got louder with each word. "Mrs. Frank, I promise you I didn't take anything. I would never steal from you. You have to believe me." "Don't lie to me." Mrs. Frank grabbed her gold phone with hands that trembled with rage. "I'm calling the police right now. I knew we couldn't trust someone like you. I should have listened to my instincts." "Someone like you?" The words hit Maria like physical blows. She knew exactly what Mrs. Frank meant. Someone poor. Someone foreign. Someone with dark skin and calloused hands. Someone who didn't belong in this perfect white house with its perfect white family. "Please," Maria begged, tears starting to blur her vision. "I have a sick daughter back home. She needs medicine. I need this job. I would never ever steal from you or anyone else. Please just let me help you look for it. Maybe it fell behind the dresser, or maybe nothing." Mrs. Frank was already dialing. "I've heard enough lies. Security. Yes. This is Mrs. Frank on Maple Street. I need police here immediately. My maid has stolen my diamond necklace." In Mrs. Frank's world, when something went missing, you blamed the help. It was simple. It was easy. It fit perfectly with everything she believed about people who weren't born rich. And it didn't matter if it was true or fair or right. It only mattered that it made sense to her. The police arrived within 45 minutes. 2 officers in dark uniforms, their faces professional, but not unkind. Maria stood in the hallway where she had mopped the floors hundreds of times, watching her dreams crumble like old newspapers in the rain. "Ma'am, we're going to need to search your belongings," one officer said gently. He seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation. They searched Maria's small purse, her backpack with the cleaning supplies, even the pockets of her uniform. They found nothing, of course, because Maria hadn't taken anything. Her hands were clean, her conscience was clear. But in a world where money talked louder than truth, innocence wasn't always enough. "Maybe she already sold it," Mrs. Frank told the officers, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "Or maybe she hid it somewhere else. I want her arrested. I want her charged with theft. I want everyone to know that stealing has consequences." "Ma'am, we didn't find any evidence," one officer started. "The evidence is that it's missing," Mrs. Frank interrupted. "She was the only one in my bedroom. She has access to everything in this house. What more evidence do you need?" And that's when the handcuffs clicked around Maria's wrists. The cold metal felt like ice against her skin. The sound echoed through the marble hallway like a gunshot. Maria closed her eyes and tried to breathe, tried to think of Sophia waiting for her in that hospital bed thousands of miles away. Jason watched from behind the staircase, his small body shaking like a leaf in a storm. He tried to count the marble tiles on the floor to calm his racing mind. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the numbers kept getting mixed up. All he could see was Maria, his friend, his safe person, being treated like a criminal. The police officers were as gentle as they could be, but they still had a job to do. They explained Maria's rights, told her about lawyers and phone calls and court dates. The words sounded like they were coming from underwater. As they led Maria toward the front door, she looked back one last time. Her eyes found Jason's across the room, and even though her heart was breaking, she tried to smile for him. "It's okay, baby," she mouthed silently. "Don't be scared. Everything will be okay." But Jason was scared, more scared than he had ever been in his entire life. Because the one person who understood him, who made the world feel safe, who loved him exactly as he was being taken away for something he knew she didn't do. Because Jason had seen something that nobody else had noticed. And now he was the only one who could save her. After Maria left in the back of the police car, the Frank house became cold again. Not just temperature cold, but soul cold. The kind of cold that settles into your bones and won't leave. Mrs. Frank hired a new maid within 2 days, a stern woman named Ruth, who treated cleaning like a military operation. She moved through the house with sharp efficiency, but without warmth. She moved Jason's toys without asking permission. She used the loud vacuum cleaner while he was in the room, forcing him to cover his ears and rock in the corner. She spoke to him in short, impatient sentences when she spoke to him at all. "Move," Ruth would say when Jason was in her way. "I have work to do." No songs, no patience, no understanding that Jason's world worked differently from everyone else's. Jason stopped drawing pictures. He stopped leaving gifts for anyone. He spent whole days in his room, lining up cars in perfect rows and counting ceiling tiles over and over. 144 tiles in his bedroom ceiling. Always 144. Mr. Frank noticed the change first. "The boy seems worse than before," he told his wife over dinner one evening. "More withdrawn, more difficult." Mrs. Frank shrugged, cutting her expensive steak into perfect squares. "He'll adjust. Children are resilient. Besides, we can't let him get too attached to the help. It's not healthy." But Jason wasn't adjusting. He was breaking apart inside, piece by piece, like one of his toy cars hitting the wall. Meanwhile, Maria sat in a cold jail cell, staring at grey walls and waiting for a trial that might never come. She had been assigned a public defender, a tired man named Mr. Rodriguez, who carried too many cases and had too little time. He seemed uninterested in her story, in her protests of innocence. "Look, Miss Santos," he said during their one brief meeting, "rich people say their jewelry was stolen, poor maids go to prison. That's how the system works. The best I can do is try to get you a plea deal." "But I didn't take anything," Maria insisted. "I'm innocent." Mr. Rodriguez looked at her with eyes that had seen too many hopeless cases. Innocent doesn't always matter. What matters is what we can prove. And right now, the evidence doesn't look good for you. At night, Maria would lie on the thin mattress in her cell and stare at the ceiling. She would think about Sophia getting sicker every day without the medicine she needed. She would think about Jason, probably confused and scared, wondering why his friend had disappeared. She would think about justice and how it seemed to have a price tag she couldn't afford. But while Maria was losing hope, Jason was just getting started. You see, people always underestimated Jason because he was different. They thought because he didn't talk much, he didn't notice things. They assumed because he avoided eye contact, he wasn't paying attention. They believed because he seemed lost in his own world, he didn't understand the real world around him. They were wrong about everything. Jason noticed everything. His brain was like a video camera that never stopped recording. He saw patterns that other people missed. He remembered details that other people forgot 5 minutes later. He could tell you what everyone in the house had been wearing 3 weeks ago, what they had eaten for breakfast, what time they had gone to bed. And Jason knew with absolute certainty that Maria didn't take that necklace. He started his investigation the way he did everything else, methodically, carefully, one step at a time. First, he mapped out the house in his mind. Jason could picture every room, every piece of furniture, every hiding spot where someone might stash stolen jewelry. He knew which floorboards creaked, which doors made noise when they opened, which windows had loose locks. Next, he reconstructed the timeline. Mrs. Frank said she left the necklace on her dresser after the charity gala on Saturday night. Sunday, she had stayed in bed all morning with a headache from too much champagne. Monday, she went shopping with her friends at the new mall across town. Tuesday morning, she discovered the necklace was missing. Maria had cleaned the master bedroom on Monday, while Mrs. Frank was out shopping. But Jason remembered something else, something important that everyone had overlooked. On Sunday morning, while Mrs. Frank was sleeping and Mr. Frank was playing golf at his exclusive country club, someone else had been upstairs, someone who didn't belong there. Jake, the gardener. Jason had been playing with his cars in the living room, arranging them by color and size, when he saw Jake go upstairs. Jake had said he needed to check a window in the master bedroom that Mrs. Frank complained was stuck, but Jason had tested that window himself that very morning during his daily routine of checking all the locks in the house. The window wasn't stuck. It opened and closed perfectly. So why had Jake lied? Jason tried to tell his parents what he had seen, but they didn't listen. They never really listened to him. "Tommy, adults are talking," his father said when Jason tugged on his sleeve during dinner, trying to get his attention. "The boy is just confused," his mother added, not even looking at him. "You know how he gets mixed up about things. His condition makes him unreliable." But Jason wasn't confused. His brain worked differently, but it worked better than anyone realized. He saw connections other people missed. He remembered things other people forgot. And he was about to prove it. Jason began watching Jake more carefully during his weekly visits to tend the gardens. He noticed things, small things, important things. Jake had a new watch, expensive looking, with tiny diamonds around the face. Jake drove a different car, newer, shinier than the beat-up truck he used to arrive in. Jake seemed nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder, jumping at sudden sounds. And Jake had quit his job the very day after Mrs. Frank discovered the necklace was missing, claiming he had found better opportunities elsewhere. Too many coincidences. Jason's logical mind didn't believe in coincidences. But knowing the truth and proving it were two different things. Jason was 8 years old. He was different. He was just a kid that most adults barely noticed. Who would believe him? He would have to find proof. Real proof. Evidence that even grown-ups couldn't ignore. Late one night, when his parents were sleeping and the house was quiet as a church, Jason made a decision that would change everything. He snuck out of his bedroom, tiptoed down the stairs, counting each one to keep himself calm, and slipped out the back door. He had never been outside alone before, especially not at night. Every shadow looked like a monster. Every sound, an owl hooting, a car driving by, the wind rustling leaves, made his heart pound so hard he thought it might jump out of his chest. But Maria was in jail for something she didn't do, and Jason was the only person in the world who could save her. He walked 6 blocks through the sleeping neighborhood, following the address he had found on a piece of paper in his father's office. 6 blocks felt like 6 miles to a scared 8-year-old boy, but Jason kept walking, one foot in front of the other, counting his steps to stay calm. Jake's apartment building was nothing like Jason's perfect house. It was old and shabby, with peeling paint and broken windows patched with tape. The hallway smelled like cigarettes and sadness. Jason climbed the stairs, counting each one, 24 steps to the third floor, apartment 3B, just like the address on the paper. He knocked on the door, his small fist making tiny sounds on the wood that seemed to echo like thunder in the quiet hallway. Jake opened the door, still half asleep and wearing a wrinkled t-shirt. When he saw Jason standing there, his face went white as fresh paper. "Kid, what are you doing here? How did you even—" "It's the middle of the night. Where are your parents?" "You took the necklace," Jason said, his voice clear and strong despite his racing heart. "I saw you go upstairs on Sunday. You lied about the window." Jake stared down at this 8-year-old boy who barely spoke to anyone, who hid from visitors, who everyone said was slow and different. How could this kid know anything? "You don't know what you're talking about, kid. You're confused. Kids like you get mixed up about things." But Jason didn't get mixed up. Not about this. "You have a scar on your right hand," Jason continued, his voice steady as a rock. "A fresh cut from where you hurt yourself opening Mrs. Frank's jewelry box. I saw the tiny blood spot on her white carpet, right next to the dresser. One small spot that everyone else missed." Jake's hand moved automatically to the bandage on his palm. How could this kid notice something so tiny, so unimportant? "You needed money," Jason continued, his serious dark eyes never leaving Jake's face. "I heard you on the phone with someone about rent 3 weeks ago. You said you were getting evicted from this apartment. You said you would find a way to get the money, no matter what." Jason's different brain had captured every detail, every conversation, every clue that everyone else had ignored or forgotten. He had been watching and listening and remembering, even when no one thought he was paying attention. "Look, kid," Jake started, but Jason wasn't finished. "You sold the necklace to buy that new watch and that new car. You let Maria go to jail for something you did. She has a sick daughter who needs medicine, and you don't even care." Jake looked down at this small, serious boy and felt something crack inside his chest. Here was a child, a kid that everyone said was difficult and weird, showing more courage and intelligence than Jake had shown in his entire adult life. I needed the money so bad," Jake whispered, his voice shaking. "I was going to lose my apartment. I was going to be homeless. I didn't know they would arrest anyone." "Yes, you did," Jason said simply. "You knew they would blame Maria. You counted on it, because she's poor and different and you thought no one would believe her." The truth hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. This 8-year-old boy had just shown him exactly what kind of person he really was, and it wasn't pretty. I'll go to the police," Jake said, his hands shaking as he reached for his jacket. "I'll tell them the truth. Right now." "We go together," Jason said firmly. "I'm not leaving until Maria is free." And so at 3 o'clock in the morning, Jake walked into the police station with a small boy beside him. The desk sergeant thought it was a joke at first, a grown man confessing to theft, led by an 8-year-old detective who looked like he should be home in bed. But Jake's story matched all the evidence perfectly. He knew exactly where the necklace had been kept. He could describe the jewelry box down to the tiny scratch on the lid. He even knew about the security cameras that the Frank family had forgotten to mention, cameras that would show him entering and leaving the house on Sunday morning. "I let an innocent woman sit in jail for 3 weeks, Jake told the officers, his voice heavy with shame. "She never took anything. She's got a sick kid back home who needs her. I'm the thief. I'm the one who should be behind bars." The paperwork took hours. Jason sat in a hard plastic chair in the police station, his legs swinging back and forth, patient as a saint. Every few minutes, he would check the clock on the wall and calculate exactly how many more minutes until Maria would be free. Dawn was breaking over the city when the police car pulled up to the county jail. Jason pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging the glass as he watched for his friend. And then she appeared. Maria walked out of that grey building looking smaller and thinner than when she had gone in. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes were red from crying and sleepless nights. Her hands shook as she signed the release papers that would give her back her freedom. But when she saw Jason waiting for her, sitting in that police car like a tiny guardian angel, her face lit up like the sunrise. "Jason? Sweet boy, what are you doing here?" Jason ran to her faster than he had ever run in his life. This boy who didn't like to be touched, who avoided physical contact, who lived in his own carefully controlled world, wrapped his arms around Maria's waist and held on tight. "I found the real thief," he said, his voice muffled against her shirt. "I solved the mystery. I saved you." Maria's tears fell like warm rain on Jason's hair. "You saved me? Oh, precious boy. You brilliant, brave, amazing boy, you saved me." The ride home was quiet in the best possible way. Jason sat next to Maria in the police car, his small hand tucked safely in hers. He told her about his investigation, about following clues like a real detective, about being scared but doing the right thing anyway. "You're a hero, Jason," Maria whispered, squeezing his hand gently. "No," Jason said, looking at her with those serious, intelligent eyes. "You're the hero. You taught me what real love looks like. You showed me that being different isn't something to be ashamed of." When they arrived at the Frank house, Mr. and Mrs. Frank were waiting on the front steps. They had been awakened by phone calls from the police, from lawyers, from reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the story. Their son, their quiet, difficult, supposedly slow son, had solved a crime that had stumped adults. He had saved an innocent woman. He had shown more courage and intelligence in one night than most people show in a lifetime. Mrs. Frank looked at Maria, shame burning her cheeks red as fire. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my respect, my gratitude, my promise that this will never happen again." "You owe her justice," Jason said, his voice firm and clear. "You owe her fairness. You owe her the chance to do her job without being scared." And for the first time in Jason's 8 years of life, his parents really truly listened to him. The weeks and months that followed brought changes that no one could have predicted. Maria got her job back, with better pay, more respect, and a heartfelt apology from the entire Frank family. She was able to bring Sophia to America for the medical treatment she needed, and the little girl got well and strong and healthy. But the biggest change was in how everyone saw Jason. His parents started paying real attention to their son's incredible gifts. They learned that being different didn't mean being broken or less than anyone else. They found doctors and teachers who understood kids like Jason, who helped him learn new ways to communicate with the world while celebrating the amazing way his mind worked. Maria became more than just a maid. She became family. She helped Jason navigate his routines and his challenges. She taught him that being different was something to be proud of, not something to hide or be ashamed of. The school district heard about Jason's detective work and invited him to speak to other children about problem solving and paying attention to details. Police detectives started asking his opinion on cold cases. Newspapers wrote articles about the 8-year-old genius who solved the case that stumped everyone. And Jason kept solving mysteries. He found Mrs. Frank's missing earring that had fallen behind the dresser. He figured out why the garden plants kept dying. The automatic sprinkler system was broken and nobody had noticed. He helped find 3 different neighbors' lost pets by observing their behavior patterns and predicting where they might go. People started calling him Detective Jason, and he wore the title with quiet pride. 1 year later, on a warm summer afternoon, Maria and Jason sat in the garden behind the Frank house. Sophia was there too, healthy and laughing as she chased butterflies between the flowers. Maria was teaching Jason to braid friendship bracelets with colorful threads. "Maria," Jason said, his fingers working carefully on the red and blue strings. "Yes, sweet boy? Thank you for seeing me, the real me." "What do you mean, honey?" Jason was quiet for a moment, concentrating on getting the pattern just right. "Before you came, nobody really saw me. They saw a problem kid, a difficult child, a boy who was broken and needed to be fixed." His fingers never stopped moving, weaving the threads together with perfect precision. "But you saw Jason. You saw that my brain works differently but not wrong. You saw that I notice things, and remember things, and understand things, even when I can't always find the words to explain them." Maria's eyes filled with the kind of tears that come from happiness so deep it overflows. "Oh, precious boy, you were never broken. You were just waiting for the right people to learn your language." "What language is that?" Maria smiled, watching as Jason held up his finished bracelet. Every thread was in exactly the right place, every color perfectly balanced. It was beautiful in a way that only came from patience and care and love. Understanding, baby. Acceptance. Love that doesn't try to change you into someone else. She paused, watching Sophia laugh as she caught a yellow butterfly on her finger. "You speak the language of seeing the world exactly as it is, in all its details and patterns and beauty. And that's a gift." Jason smiled, one of his real smiles that lit up his whole face, and held out the bracelet. "This one's for you. Because you saved me first, before I could save you." As the sun set behind them, painting the sky in soft pinks and purples, Maria tied the bracelet around her wrist. It was made of simple threads and love, and the kind of friendship that changes everything. It was more precious than any diamond necklace ever created, because they had both learned something beautiful. The most valuable treasures in life can't be bought or sold or stolen. They can only be freely given from one heart to another, in moments of trust and understanding and unconditional love. In that golden moment, with Sophia's laughter filling the air and Jason's hand warm in hers, Maria knew that sometimes the most important detective work isn't about finding what's missing. It's about discovering what was always there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be valued, waiting to be loved exactly as it is. And sometimes the most powerful investigations are conducted not by trained professionals with badges and guns, but by children with hearts brave enough to fight for justice, no matter how small they are. The story of Maria and Jason spread far beyond the walls of the Frank mansion. Local news stations picked it up first, then national networks. 8-year-old autistic boy solves crime, saves innocent woman, became a headline that traveled around the world. But for Jason, the fame didn't matter. What mattered was that Maria was free, that Sophia was healthy, and that his family finally understood him. What mattered was that he had learned something precious about himself, that being different wasn't a disability. It was a superpower. Mrs. Frank started a foundation to help families with autistic children, funding research and support programs. She never forgot the lesson her son had taught her about looking beyond the surface to see the real person underneath. Mr. Frank changed too. He began spending real time with Jason, learning about his interests, his routines, his incredible way of seeing patterns in everything around them. They started building model planes together on Sunday afternoons, Jason's careful attention to detail, making each one perfect. Jake served his time in prison, but when he got out, he did something surprising. He came to the Frank house and asked to speak to Jason. The boy who had exposed his crime listened as Jake apologized, really apologized for what he had done. "You showed me what courage looks like," Jake told Jason. "A little kid had more guts than I did. You made me want to be a better person." Jake kept that promise. He started working with a program that helped ex-convicts find honest jobs. He never forgot the 8-year-old detective who had changed his life by refusing to let injustice win. Years passed. Jason grew taller, his voice deeper, but his gift for seeing truth never dimmed. He went to college early, studied forensic science and psychology. He became one of the youngest detective consultants in the country's history, helping solve cases that baffled seasoned investigators. But no matter how famous he became, no matter how many crimes he solved, Jason never forgot the most important lesson Maria had taught him, that love sees what others miss, that kindness is the greatest detective skill of all, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. Maria stayed with the Frank family until Sophia graduated from medical school, inspired by her mother's strength and Jason's example to become a doctor who helps other sick children. When Sophia was ready to start her own practice, Maria finally returned to the Philippines, not as a desperate woman seeking work, but as someone who had helped change the world, one act of love at a time. The day before Maria left for home, she and Jason sat one more time in their favorite spot in the garden. Jason was 22 now, a grown man with his own detective agency, but in that moment he was still the 8-year-old boy who had saved her life. "I have something for you," Maria said, pulling out a small wrapped package. Inside was the very first friendship bracelet Jason had ever made for her, carefully preserved all those years. Beside it was a new one that Sophia had made, with threads that spelled out "Thank you" in tiny letters. "From both of us," Maria said, "for teaching us that heroes come in all sizes, all ages, and all kinds of different minds." Jason smiled, that same bright smile that had lit up Maria's world 15 years earlier. "And you taught me that love doesn't need words, it just needs someone willing to see." As Maria's plane lifted off into the sunset sky, Jason stood at the airport window, watching until it disappeared into the clouds. In his pocket, he carried both bracelets, reminders of the day his life changed, the day he learned that being different was his greatest strength. The security guard at the airport noticed the young man standing alone at the window and approached him. "You okay, son?" Jason turned, and the guard was struck by the intelligence and kindness in his eyes. "More than okay," Jason said. "I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be." And in that moment, the boy who had once been seen as broken, difficult, and strange stood tall as the man who had learned the most important truth of all. Sometimes, the greatest mysteries aren't the ones we solve with our minds, they're the ones we solve with our hearts. This story reminds us that justice isn't always found in courtrooms or police stations. Sometimes it's found in the courage of a child who refuses to let innocence be punished. Everyone has value. Everyone deserves to be seen. And sometimes the most powerful detectives are the ones the world underestimates most. True heroism isn't about being the biggest or the strongest or the loudest. It's about being brave enough to stand up for what's right, even when you're small, even when you're different, even when the whole world says you don't matter. Because you do matter. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And love, real, patient, understanding love, can solve mysteries that no amount of money or power ever could. I would love to know what you would have done in this situation. Drop your thoughts below. I'll be reading every single comment. Dear friends, what you just saw is only one part of the bigger picture. In the next video, I'll reveal the twist no one saw coming, so make sure you're here when it drops. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so much, and don't forget to give this video a like. Hit the subscribe button and share with someone who needs to hear it.